Good morning, beautiful artists. Today I wanted to share with you, I was looking through some of my older paintings, and when I lived at the beach for about 10, 11 years, I painted a lot of these simple little beach scenes, and I know a lot of you have asked me about these, so I'm going to show you just a very simple, easy way to paint the water and a little bit of the skies in the background. Here I have some sand showing. You don't even have to have that. You could just make it, all water. But there's dry brush involved here for the sparkles. I'm going to use a little bit of tissue for the clouds. So let's go ahead and get started. You can absolutely use your Artisto pads, which are fabulous. As you know, this isn't an Artisto pad. This was an old one I had to find this painting in. But as you know, I love those Artisto pads. And again, they're so great because you can keep them, label the pads for reference for later. But today, since I was gifted these 100% cotton Meeden papers. And the other thing, you guys, too, I noticed in some countries you cannot get those Artisto pads. So this is a fabulous choice. Again, 100% cotton. These are a block, so you don't have to tape down your paper if you are working wet and wet. So I think it's a really great choice. And I've been listing this link. I just bought some more and listed the link on my descriptions. And then the brush I'm going to be using today to wet the background of the sky and then maybe some of the ocean. I don't usually use this brush, but this is the Princeton 16 round. It's a heritage, holds a lot of water. So I'm going to be playing with that today. And then I've got my little tissue here to wipe my brush on if I need to dab it off. And you can absolutely, for beginners, I'm always recommending this Paul Rubens MeiLang palette. This is their smaller one. Look at all these choices of blue you get. That's why I love this palette. If you're a lazy painter daily like I am, you don't have to worry about mixing colors. And it can also be a little intimidating for the beginner. So I think this is a great little palette. And then I just refill these as needed with my MeiLang tube. So it's really great. I also have my Winsor Newtons. You can certainly use those as well, but because I'm painting so much, that's not real economical for me. So I have sprayed my paints, getting them activated. I've got my Meeden ceramic palette here with my wash water, my rinse water, as you know, really important because watercolors are so transparent. If you're not, every time you go into another color with a clean brush, you're going to get whatever color you used previously kind of transferring over, and you could get some real muddy colors. So make sure you're washing and rinsing. I love this one. It's beautiful. Makes me feel really professional. It's ceramic. Just love the Meeden products. Now, I am going to throw some of these in here, but you don't need these. If you want to purchase these, again, these are the MAB watercolors. As you know, I'm a little obsessed with them. This is their Ocean series, and look at those beautiful colors. So I'm going to add some of that in for some of the sparkle here on the water. I think it's going to be really pretty. You don't have to do that. You can just use your colors from your MeiLang palette, and that's perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do first is I want to create that sky. So I'm using this big brush because I want to cover a lot of area. So I'm going to go down about 2/3 of the way and really wet this. I don't have puddles per se, but it is quite shiny. And then while that is wet, I'm going to go in and just grab my paint, kind of mixing it in here. You know, you can really make the sky whatever color you want. I'm kind of mixing a blue and a little bit of a turquoise, and we're going to lay down a wash. So I'm using the tip and the side of my brush. This brush is great, this 16, for being able to lay down a lot of water. I want a little bit more turquoise there. And you want to start with the darker color at the top, and then as you move down, kind of lightening it up. So just grabbing that water. You can even mix it up a little bit, because we're going to dab in some clouds. Always kind of my favorite thing, by the way. Love dabbing in clouds. It's just so easy. And then this is a gradiated wash. So I'm rinsing my brush and pulling down that paint until it virtually goes into almost clear. I might add a tiny bit more of that dark blue up at the top. And this amount of paint and water I've got here is quite wet, which is why I love this paper, because it's on a block, meaning it's sealed on all edges and it's not going to warp. Now you could get around using a block by just taping your paper down. So washing and rinsing my brush. And then what I'm going to do is take a little tissue paper. I'm sure you've seen this before. It's a pretty common technique. And I'm going to start dabbing in some little clouds. Look how perfect. If you're a beginner and you haven't done this, perfect clouds. There we go. If you need to make it a little bit whiter, some of them. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to take my 8 brush, and you can also, for you beginners, you can purchase this whole set of Degado rounds. I've been using them almost a year, and look at how snappy they are. They've still got their points. I really love these brushes. I'm going to use my Princeton 8 round today, but you get a whole set of these all-round brushes, Degados. For students, they're great in case you don't want to dive in or make that big investment in the Velvetouch Princetons. You get a whole set of these, and I noticed in different countries it's different. So some you get, in the US it's 10, and in other countries you get, I believe, 13. And then what I'm going to do is just work into some of these little clouds with a very watery value of kind of some blue, just into those clouds. I'm going to get a little darker blue here, tap in maybe at the bottom. There we go. Maybe some of these. And then I'm going to soften that line as well. So rinse and wash and rinse my brush, and then go in and just soften this line. And look how pretty that is. I always love these little clouds. Kind of creates that little shadowy effect. Kind of dramatic. There we go. Maybe over here. And I'm really just following the cloud line that's already there. Just softening that edge a tiny bit. Just with a damp brush with no color on it. You don't have to do that to everyone. Just gives a little interest. There you go. I think that's quite enough. I actually really like those. Okay, now next what I'm going to do is, and you don't even have to go in with those dark colors to your clouds. You could just leave it as I did with just some of that white is even perfectly fine. But I like to add a little bit of the shadows. So there you go, nice and soft. Okay, so let's do our dry, we're gonna use dry brush for the ocean. What I'm gonna do is just pick up some of my paint, put it here in the palette, and we're going to really tap off any extra paint and water we've got there. And then we're going to use the side of our brush, okay? So you can also, by the way, practice this on your sheet of paper, just using the side of your brush. And we get this kind of what feels like a sparkle effect. This is also great for trees and scenes where there's maybe sand or something like that. There we go. I just think this is such a fun technique. And then I'm going to soften some of that. Like so. And look at that. How easy was that with that dry brush effect? Now what I might do down here is use a little bit of our yellow ochre and maybe a tiny bit of brown, and let's just create a little spot here. Let me find a spot. Get that sand color, and we're gonna go in. That's a little dark, so I'm just gonna lighten that up. And draw and paint in that sand. There we go. Isn't that pretty? Nice. And you can come in with maybe some little specks. We're also going to go over that with some toothbrush so that we can get little grains of sand. Now this is where you can definitely use your regular paints, but I'm going to go in and just draw in, paint in rather, that horizon line. A little bit darker. There we go. And I'll probably go over that even one more time because there's some, it's a little bit damp. So I could even go in and just pick that up, lift it like so. There we go. So we'll let that dry a little bit. I'm going to soften those blooms with just a damp brush. So I erase those and kind of blend them out. There we go. So we're getting some real fun effects here. And if you ever want to do that blending, so right there, I kind of got rid of the blooms. Just use a damp brush. I don't want to get rid of all those little white sparkles because I quite like those. Just looks like the sun dancing off of the water. Okay, now I'm going to go in, and what I'm going to do, let's see, what do we want to do next? We need this to dry a bit. So I'm going to hit it with my heat gun. 1 second, let me grab that. There we go. But already, look how beautiful this was. And it was fairly easy. So let's just hit that. Get this to dry a little bit. Well, I find my toothbrush because we're going to add some white gouache here. And the white gouache I'm going to use is Winsor Newton. This is the zinc white. Although I will tell you the Mission Titanium opaque white works a little better. So actually I think I'll use that. It's a little bit more opaque. And the gouache shows up a little bit better. So there we go. That feels pretty dry. It's not cool to the touch. And look at that beautiful sky. Those clouds. Isn't that lovely? I lived at the beach for a long time and always said those winter sunrises and sunsets were the most beautiful. Okay, so now we're going to go in, and I think what I'll do, I'm going to use my smaller, again, you can use your Legato brush. This is the 5. You can use whichever one you like. You get a choice of 10. What I'm going to do right here is go in and just draw a little bit, paint rather. I'm going to create a darker line here, maybe with some dark blue in there, and I'm just going to go in and touch in on the edge of this. Now that's a little bit darker than I wanted, so I'm going up against it with a damp brush. And I might even, let's go back to that sand color and use that. There we go. Yeah, I like that a lot better. And just show a little bit of that shadow that you find under the wave. And then I'll go in, wash and rinse your brush, and just go in with a damp brush and barely smooth that over. You'll have to work relatively quick here because that paint will dry before you get to it. There we go. And it gives you that effect of the wave lapping over. Now what I'm going to do here, before I do some splatters, is I think I'm going to go in with some of this blue. And I've got a, let's see here, I've got a little swatch sheet I did of these beautiful ocean colors, although not finding it right now. That's okay. It was something like that. Anyway, so I've got the dry brush again, and I'm going to go on its side. And this is just going to add some more touches of that sparkle. You may have to practice this dry brush just a bit to really get the hang of it. But look at that beautiful sparkle it's offering. And I might even just blend it with some of the pigment that I was using. Let's go into the back here and create that line. There we go. Go in and blend that a bit. There we go. I like that line in the back to be somewhat dark. So let me get a little darker color here. Just go in. I really feel like it gives that illusion of its back in the background. Really pulls your eye back there, like that. Now wash and rinse my brush. Can spread that out a bit. It's also got this sparkle in there. Let's add a little bit more of that sparkle. Maybe in here, using the side of my brush, that wonderful dry brush effect. It's funny because for years I did not like using dry brush because I felt it was hard on my brushes, but I do like the effect that it gives, especially in ocean scenes or where there's water. I think it's really effective. So there you go. I've got enough of that. Now what I'm going to do here is let's go ahead and get out the old paintbrush. I'm going to put some of this Mission Titanium White on my palette here. I don't usually leave gouache on my palettes because I find it's a little bit, for me anyways, it tends to stick. And it's hard for me to re-wet, and sometimes it even cracks. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit of water there. And I'm just using a regular old toothbrush. A little bit more water. And then let's go in and maybe cover this top area so it's not in my sky. And I'm going to go in and just start adding in some of that splash and spray from the ocean waves. I know when I lived there for all those years, when it got windy in the evening, you would see that beautiful ocean spray kind of spray around. And then what I'm going to do is go in with my 8 Velvetouch or whatever brush you're using and just add in some little white water. Just spreading that around. Like that. And you can soften some of these edges underneath. I have even used a sponge for some of that. In the past, when I was painting a lot of these beach scenes, I would use a sponge to dab on. But right now, I'm just using a little bit of water. There we go. Just blending that out a bit. So we haven't necessarily got any hard edges And then I'm going to do a very light wash on the bottom here of a little bit of blue, so it looks like maybe there's a tiny bit of water, but you want this to be very faint. Like maybe there's just that hint of where the water was. Like that. Just very faint. So as you notice here, again, as always, I'm using a lot of little glazes. And I might even go in with a very light wash of that sand color and just dab in a bit here. That was a little much. I'm lifting that out. Just to give that feeling of that sand. Maybe you can see through parts of the water. Just touching in here, letting it kind of spread with that white. There we go. Yeah, I quite like that. I am going to go in and just do one more little darker area there using some of this dark blue. Just to barely the thinnest line. So I'm just using the point of my brush with the smallest little line. Now that's kind of wet, so really you could wait because I wanted a harder line there. Didn't really want that to spread. There we go. So I might wait on the rest of that till it dries a little bit more. But I think I'm basically done. The only other thing I could think of to do is use my toothbrush again and make a puddle of that sienna and that sand color, and then use my toothbrush and pick that up, cover these other areas because I just want to splatter on my sand areas, and we'll do some more of that. Just to make it look like little sand grains. And there you go. I'll hold this up in a minute and you can see that. So I've got some little sand grains in there. Let's see if we can, let me hit this real quick. And I'm going to go in and just barely darken that line again. Maybe some brown in there. Too much. Just to give that feeling of a little bit of a shadow here. Go in with a damp brush and just soften that a bit. Just like that. All right, well, I think I'm done. I hope you guys give this a try. You could do lots more fun things in here. You could actually even add in more of that splatter to some of these little waves. Let's cover our, well, we don't have to. just to look like some splash there. Just have fun with it. See, you know, practice with using this toothbrush and see what you can achieve. So there you go. I hope you give it a try, and happy painting, friends. Thanks so much for being here in my little community. So much fun with you guys, and I hope you try out these techniques. I will look up all the links for what we used here, and love this Meeden pad, by the way. I think it's really great. All right, I will see you all soon. Thank you for being here.